institution that has invited us here. I want to greet you all. President, let me take this opportunity for inviting me to be part of this important session. It is not by coincidence that we are gathered as the different SRC leaders, but you are all here in the Nelson Mandela University. History repeating itself. An institution that, as those that came before me, explained that it has produced lots of struggle stalwarts whom we built from the work that they started. They were here trying to champion their own cause, that of the popular cry of the people of our country towards political freedom. And you are here today as leaders of today, charged with a responsibility to ensure that you deliver economic freedom to all in your lifetime. As a proud former member of the ANC Youth League, which gave birth to the fighters, you can tell of the great history and the pride that we have when we talk of the credentials and the contribution that young people can make in defining the society and the history that must be made. We are gathered here today not to talk about why people don't have access to housing, not to talk about why other students are not in the lecture rooms, not to talk about why do we still have hawkers that are without shelters, but to have a dialogue on an important matter that defines our journey as we seek to deliver economic freedom in our own lifetime, that of placing the digital transformation in higher education. That's why we are here. Our mission defined, clear, and sound. Many speakers that came before me made presentations and defined, academically so, the digital transformation, where it arises from what it seeks to do, but most importantly, what is required. I will add upon those. I won't be repeating that discussion. And of course, just to make reference to it in terms of the key components that we should all focus on as we seek to locate this and make sure that it's at the center in transforming the education system of our country, redefining South Africa's path in the freedom of Africa and the freedom and liberation of Africa. They made reference to the need to invest in human capital development, which talks to the skills, as Prof outlined the different skills that are required for the future out there when he made a presentation. He then made reference to the kind of leadership that is required in order to drive digital transformation. Honorable Mkhaha came and talked about the need to ensure that we bridge the digital divide by ensuring that there is access for all in order to avoid the mistakes of the past that divided us as per the geographical area, race, language, and many other things. Your task as the leaders of today is to make sure that you deliver economic freedom. I did say that. But what's important for you outside chanting slogans on economic freedom is to understand the environment that you are participating and operating in. Just like those that came before us, studied their own environment, others coming from homes who were very poor, homes with no educated people, but they then united at a common cause, that of liberating the people of South Africa, utilizing education that they got when they came to the institutions of learning. They studied the system and used the knowledge that they had acquired through the system in order to defeat the system. That today, me and you are politically free. Therefore, the importance of understanding the ecosystem, but also of acquiring knowledge in order to help you defeat that you see as an obstacle to that you want to achieve, is what we should all strive to do. As we are all a generation of the internet, which many people never envisioned, we are tasked with the serious challenge, not only of understanding internet and the socio-economic of internet, but that of understanding the ecosystem and the economics of the internet, including the emerging technologies of the fourth industrial revolution that we talk about today. And of course, at the center is digital transformation. And in digital transformation, a key primary task outside inclusion is to ensure that you build digital citizens. You can produce all academics and professionals, but if they are not digital citizens, they will not be relevant to the society that we live in today. Sinamanesi, sinogqirha, the social workers, we have journalists, but if they are digitally literate, they will not serve their purpose. People make this mistake that if you have gone to university and acquired a degree, you are relevant. No, you're not. We're living in a digital era that forces everyone to be a digital literate. Therefore, acquiring bilingual skills is what we are supposed to do. In my space and those that I interact with on a daily basis, I always tell them that the degree that you started 4 years back is no longer relevant today. Prof made reference to the fact that even doctors can be replaced, and that's the reality of the society we live in, not by choice. I had many people, Prof, when I came, you know me, I'm Stella Ndabeni Abrahams. When I came with the overall, branded 4IR commander. Yeah, well, every revolution requires a commander, okay, let me tell you. If you think you're gonna drive a revolution, there's no commander, there's gonna be chaos. In my black overalls, branded 4IR commander, I saw people on Twitter, you know, clever people, and they're all making a joke. That stupid thing 4IR is about overalls. Why is he wearing overalls and all people don't have internet and. And the following day, SAFM was running with it, having people coming on to make their inputs. One person from Cape Town that clearly defined as if he had sat with us and had a dialogue. He was like, I'm so happy because people don't know what 4IR is. And indeed, as people come from communication space, when we went out of our way and left all the fancy clothes to wear overalls, not that we inspired by our children. So when we did that and got those overalls, it was to get the society to talk about this fourth industrial revolution. Because if people do not talk about it, they don't see the need to work on it. Now that we created a dialogue in the society, everybody talking, hey, there's a new brand. I get it, you are used to Gucci because you don't care about our local designers. Then you thought, hey, there's another 4IR brand. And people began the dialogue to say, what is this fourth industrial revolution? What is it about? How is it a danger? What are the advantages that it presented? And we went proud because we're like, we've created a dialogue. Now everybody talks about 4IR. And we were so happy. Even when they asked questions in Parliament to our leadership, we were like, hey, people are asking about 4IR, we like it. We have a responsibility to make sure that we set the trends as inspired by those that came before us. I said key to this and is to ensure that we build digital citizens. I said when the Prof and Honorable Mkhacha spoke here, they spoke about the need for bridging the digital divide, which talks to the access. I just want to take you through a few steps in the digital transformation process. And of course, my own framework to those, oh, you are all academics here. My own framework is the one, I like the HANA one, in terms of digital transformation framework. I know most people, especially men, they like VIAL. They normally quote him on digital transformation. But now I decided, but you know, people talk about everyone else. Then when we talk about women, they want to say you are sexist. You're recognizing women as if women do not have a role. So just for that reason, that I've decided that I'll be focusing on those women and adopting those. One of the key things, it changes how business models have been created. There's a need for new business models, not because we have a choice, but because we are forced. Because it moves, as we talk about internet and the speeds and everything, it moves from gigabytes to the terabits. Fast speed internet. Those that are engineers and whatever, then they will know about that. Fast speed internet, because that's what the fourth industrial revolution offers or requires in terms of the infrastructure. Recently, you have seen our authority releasing the information to apply, the invitation to apply, the ITA. Towards the process of licensing spectrum. You've had people talking about 5G, people talking about 4G, that talks to the kind of infrastructure and the frequency that is required to drive the fourth industrial revolution, which therefore technologies respond to. So it's that transition from gigabytes to terabits. And then again, I said you are the internet generation. But now we're transitioning from internet to artificial intelligence. Hence, as you listen to many speakers, they will tell you of the importance of putting artificial intelligence at the center, including building skills, as I will be talking to the recommendations by the Presidential Commission of Fourth Industrial Revolution. Key to that is the storage of the information that is gathered from all these things that you do, your cell phone, all these things that you use, your GPS, those that have alarm systems that are automated, your cars that have become data centers, because we're storing information on the cloud, no longer on the physical data centers. That's the transition. Therefore, the battle or the currency that we have, we're all fighting for in the fourth industrial revolution is data. And data needs to be stored, hence there's the battle of the space amongst the countries in the world. Who occupies the space matters, and when we sit in those international bodies, therefore trying to find expression for our own countries and regions, it's very important for you as leaders of students to have that appreciation to say, as you are studying this and leading young people, which role will they play in all this that we're talking about? Because leaders should stay informed at all times so that they can lead their constituencies to the rightful place. We spoke of the data as the new oil, and Prof made reference to the scarce skills. Amongst them is the issue of the data science skills that are not available. Then as we can talk about the business model, there's that matters most, an enabling environment that needs to be created by government and the governing party with the regulators. Because we can have all of this, but if the environment is enabled in terms of saying what kinds of policies and regulations must make sure that we have put at the center digital transformation, we will not achieve those. So there's a need for new policies and regulation, including agility. Right now, Honorable Mfaka, when I take my bill to Parliament, President, it takes 18 months. They go baby to internet that time. Things are moving faster in the internet space. And parliamentarians want their process. Minister must not try to undermine Parliament. And then 18 months past, innovators are innovating every 6 months, actually every 6 weeks. By the time Parliament passes a bill, it's outdated in the space. The regulator is trying to find expression in the process, it's gone. Prof said we shouldn't have education lagging behind innovation. But unfortunately, Prof, reality has shown us that most innovators are not waiting for education. That's why even if you go to Silicon Valley, universities are losing tech people, innovators. They are leaving to join practical work. Hence, we are saying at the center of this that we're doing is that we must revive vocational education. Because one of the key drivers in terms of the skills in the fourth industrial revolution is building the artisans that must deliver the smart cities that we're talking about. Key to that, of course, is the convergence of legislations as Prof defined what the fourth industrial revolution is about, convergence of the three that he spoke about. But most importantly, the collaboration between communities, private sector, and government is what will help us identify our own clear path in the fourth industrial revolution. Now, I'm going back to address the issue on inclusion that both speakers mentioned. It's important because as you fight your battles, you've got to understand where do you locate yourselves and what is that you must fight for in the education space. We spoke about inclusion, which talks to access. I spoke about the fact that our authority CASA has released the ITA was that look into that to say what are the key skills that are required. Prof did talk to them, but I just want to highlight a few that are from that have been identified in the National Digital Skills Strategy, and I will tell you why. The key components which focus on digital foundations, making sure that basic and intermediate digital skills, which focuses learners for society that is driven by technologies, digital futures and mastery, in terms of building advanced digital skills. I think it was Honorable Mukaka who made reference to the professor that produced the 3D ear. Yes, and people tend to think these things happen in Silicon Valley. But these things can happen here. All we have to do is to make sure that we adapt to the new ways. As I said, the tools of trade have changed. That requires a change also in terms of the skills. So we are trying to say, how do we reindustrialize the electronics industry amongst others in order for it to be responsive, that we can be able to manufacture things here. I have that I drive in the department that many now hate me for. That of saying it is high time that we take a stance, or we borrow from Mao Zedong's slogan, you know, that one of China must charge and surpass. You know, it's time for us to charge and surpass in the technology space. We challenge those that we are with, we make sure we learn from them, but we've got to make sure that we overtake them. And that's the only way that we'll be able to reclaim our space and make sure that we do not only turn around the economy, but we're giving our people a space to participate in the invention of technologies. We've been continuously consuming technologies. I've had students, leaders chanting one laptop, one tablet, one student. And when you ask where do they come from, it's okay, you want us to take our money, but who is designing these technologies, who is coming up with the content, what software goes to those technologies, and those are leaders in higher education, and they do not provide us with that solution. And that's why it must matter fast, understanding the entire ecosystem of where we participate. So we are trying to make sure that hand in hand with the Department of Higher Education, Science and Innovation and the private sector, fortunately we have you. You know I'm a newlywed. I'm not 20 years in my marriage. You know, so when we say until death do us part, we mean it's we do everything to defend it, so you are stuck with us. We've had the partnership that is here. We've got to do this thing. We've got to make you relevant leaders that we must, when we want to retire, we retire confidently. We shouldn't be like the ones that we have today that are scared to hand over the baton. We've got to voluntarily give you the baton because you have shown us that you can do it. Of course, it is important again to make sure that there's coordination across government and stakeholder groups, and therefore enforce collaboration, because as governments, we can't do it alone, just like you student leaders can't do it alone. You need to make sure that we mobilize everybody that understands the importance of investing in human capital development in order for the private sector to thrive, for governments to remain in power, for societies to prosper, but most importantly, for you leaders to retain your constituents. It's important, and all of those, they need funding, and it's important to collaborate. So, putting digital transformation at the center in higher education focuses on those basic things. Addressing the digital divide that is there by lack of access, building that human capital development that must appreciate and be able to do the things that need to be done, but also, as Prof said, make sure that you build a community that can provide knowledge in order to create innovations so that we move them from the process of ideation to the output that we must get. And that requires investment in research and innovation. You should be fighting for it. You shouldn't allow universities and government to say we are putting 0.1% on research, because it tells you that the policies that government will produce are not relevant to what the market requires. You've got to accept it when you say the market requires. Well, the market are drivers of the growth of the economy. Therefore, it's important that we understand that and do our research so that our policies, therefore, as people now, will represent the interests of all. They do not lag behind, they do not delay innovation, because when you delay innovation, it means you are depriving our people of an opportunity to participate in the space revolution I spoke about. The question of the land, digital transformation in higher education. People take that for granted. I had a fighter in Parliament asking when I had a debate, we were talking about land, was saying, land, where does land feature here? We're talking about fuck industrial revolution. I was like, all right, fighter, we gave that to you. We're going to tell you why. Because as I said, the infrastructure that we put on the ground is put on the land. The infrastructure that we deploy is put on the land. If, as we fight for the land, other people have already put infrastructure, that land is useless because it will not help us derive any economic value. They would have put water infrastructure, they would have put electricity, water, they would have put digital infrastructure. And they will give us the land, and then we'll continue to pay rent because your children, your siblings, yourselves cannot stay in an area that does not have Wi-Fi. You need Wi-Fi today, and you want to go crazy when there's no connectivity. Those are the things that we should always think about. As government delays in the process of delivering on the commitments, how do we then work together with them despite our differences? We shouldn't lose sight of that matters. And what matters is to make sure that we all deliver economic freedom. I said not less slogan, it doesn't work. It requires practicality, and therefore it requires people who can process ideas, advise government accordingly, and therefore be able to go out and occupy the space again. If the society does not have a leadership that understands that, then it's a lost cause. We may be talking about education in terms of access for all, but how many people are admitted to universities? The capability of the universities to admit. What happens to the matriculants that could not find space in universities? So when I come in as a bridge to internet, mine is to say, now it's high time that we go for online learning. And of course, Mugabe, the universities get very angry when I say that because I'm disrupting their economy. Because when you come to classes, there's the entire ecosystem that people benefit from, and I'm like, hello. My responsibility is very easy, is to make sure that people get the service, and in this context, people must get knowledge, and therefore knowledge can be delivered here.
using this tablet. It can be whatever brand, sitting wherever you are, you must have access to it. Therefore, my responsibility is to make sure that I provide internet for all, which is why we'll be establishing a PMO as we seek to make sure that we connect everyone. Shifting from what we did, the SA Connect broadband program that was approved, it talks to us connecting public buildings. COVID has shown us you can connect schools, but people don't have access to the service or those buildings. It doesn't matter. Schools, universities, and post offices. Therefore, we are clear that we've got to provide connectivity to homes, households. For you to achieve success in building a smart city, you need smart people. If you don't have smart people, there's no smart cities. Because smart cities require smart technologies and smart services. And therefore, if your people are not smarter, we're not going to get that. Hence, we are shifting focus now to say we've got to partner with the private sector, because they have said we need about 80 million rands in order to roll out the infrastructure that we're talking about in this government, in terms of the economy impact that we have. So we're not going to be able, so we're going to be partnering with the private sector. And once more, ownership comes in. If you invest in infrastructure now, what's going to happen in 10 years? If it's not in the hands of government, as we're talking about these partnerships, then when people decide to increase the value of whatever they're offering you, they may start because they want to attract everyone by saying, we can give you 10 megabits or 10 gigabits for a week or for a month at 50 rands, and everybody's going to jump and want to be connected. I know how you ask South Africans. Everybody's going to jump and want to be connected, and then in the next 5 years, they say 1,000 rand, what are you going to do? Because people will be owning the infrastructure. So it's important that we understand the entire ecosystem, as I said, and therefore you make sure that your voice is heard in the platforms that take these decisions. The Presidential Commission report has been released. I think I signed gazetting on Thursday, if I'm correct? Thursday. On Thursday I signed for it to be gazetted, and therefore feel free to make your inputs. So that, as you say, government and everybody else that worked on the report, we see these things, but I agree, Sifuni share it. Where is it? And then you define it. You don't ask government where is your share or how you're going to benefit. You identify your own space because you have an understanding of that you want to achieve, and that government is doing to say, this is what we can do. Why can't we, from school, have our own entrepreneurs? Singapore is someone not just to be employed from, please, this one. You know, everybody, no, I have this degree, but I'm unemployed. Everybody wants to be employed where I don't know and how. We should be able to produce graduates that understand that theirs is to provide solutions, whether it's entrepreneurial stage or whatever. That's what we're trying to do. So we've got to work together in influencing these documents and policies that government comes up with. And when we do that, I'm looking at all the aspects of digital transformation in the education sector. Because without the education sector having that appreciation, all other sectors will be doomed. I'm not joking. You do not have an engineering sector or energy sector without education. So you are the ones that should be the beacons of hope to the entire country to say the SRC is mad, and this is what they are saying in terms of these key components that we think you're not dictating to government, but you are saying we think as you government have made a commitment that it is your responsibility to build better lives for all. This is what we think you can do in the aspects, whether in energy and according to your different faculties that you belong to, but you should influence that discussion. And when that happens, we're then able to say there's no need for us to come to this one. We'll come to this one because we miss each other in terms of physical interaction. But hey, we want our own Zoom that we can access education sitting at home, behaving like students, and therefore we're able to go to the garden, sit in the plot here. Oh, you guys, please, man. Everybody goes to the supermarkets to buy even cabbage, even those that come from the rural areas and townships, once they have land that they can use. That's more than land that people have, those that have space. So it's very important that we start to understand the ecosystem and the environment that we participate in, locate ourselves, and do not only locate yourselves, you go and fight for it. You go and fight for it. This is not inheritance. Even if we inheritance, people fight, at homes. People fight for inheritance these days. So you shouldn't wait and think that the baton is going to be handed to yourself. Or, as we say, you are the future, nobody can stop you. You think you become the future the day you leave university. You've got to show us today that you are the future and that you can be entrusted with the future of education as leaders in the education sector. I get paid to talk, and that I can do. Allow me to tell all of you, as I'm here as the Minister of Communications in an ANC-led government, that the ANC loves you so much.
My name is Comrade Gaddafi from University of Venda. The professor is my own boy also. So fortunately, the National Revolution is from Venda, but it's not witchcraft. But it's from Venda. I'm from there. It's my own boy. Professor Marwana also is my little friend. My own boy also is from there. In Venda. Quickly, they said we should not ask questions, but there's something I want to bring before you. There's an issue here. I was listening to a presentation, but there's no way we involve students or people living with disability on how to get extra support or training so that they can be able to participate. In University of Venda, when COVID started, we were having issues of students who can't see. And if you can't see properly, and you do not have devices that you can able to open it was very much difficult. Some didn't even wanted to drop out, but we understand that matter because we were from the government and we were able to help. So in future, when you make presentation, include students living with disability so that we avoid tears in future. Because there's someone who's going to account, Common President Mugabe, Arnold from our university. You will take it to her commission of women rights, you will explain, Minister will not be there. So we must involve people living with disability. That's one. I'm left with 1 minute, so I apologize. I'm from Venda, I mentioned it, I'm from Venda. Where I come from, there's a problem of network. So when you are bringing these things, you must also know how to manage network. Because I have stood there where the network is only the chief. They must go to the chief to access network. It is very much difficult. So these things are forcing industrial revolutions must manage to reach the poor like myself and everyone else. Or if it's a collapse, it's not going to go anywhere. So we're going to collapse it. If it's not going to favor the poor, we're going to collapse it. We are telling you now, and it's not going to find expressions. So these things of forced industrial revolution must manage to go to China. Prof, you're not China. There's no other way in China.
Thank you very much, President.
Yes. Lastly is that this one is very much important, and I don't want people to laugh when I'm speaking.
Thank you very much, President.
We want the minister to initiate courses. In the University of Venda, we have one course that is English communication skills. That module was meant for people who are doing religion, who can speak English so that they can be able to communicate when they go to the offices. Now, in first industrial revolution, we must have such a module to teach us who are doing LLB to be able to participate in technology so that we can hire us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Build technologies, like they also build some devices. So it would be great that we also work closely with the committee, the 4R committee, because we are trying to build a very vibrant ecosystem that is actually responding to the social activities, to the social problems that we are facing. Remember, the minister said that we need to identify which part that we have to fit in. So we see there are a lot of problems that are facing the country. We even saw during the COVID-19 that all the industries have been shaped by the COVID-19. So as young people, we need to decide and find our space. We have to come up with apps on the artificial intelligence and in the space of the machine learning. It is us who are supposed to build and localized technologies. So we are really looking forward to work closely with the SAUS, because one of our arms of deliveries is on universities. If you go to Free State, the CPUT that we are closely working with, will help you starting from ideation to commercialization. So we help you with the IP and making prototypes. Thank you so much.
My name is Motsi Koi, the Secretary General of the of WSU. In terms of campus, because our campuses are 4, I'm based in Queenstown campus, and this is my president who is based in Tati. I think let's quickly clarify, Chair, what you have initially said to us, that we would probably have to have only comments. I think you are limiting us when you do so. It's better that you also allow us to sort of have some questions, because we'll probably have some questions for the minister, and you can't then tell us to find answers. Perhaps the answers will have been brought by the minister. Yeah. I've got basically sort of 2 questions, but in an extent there might be a broader in terms of that. First question will probably go to the Prof who has engaged us, where you talked about readying the future, readying the graduates for the future. Currently, the institutions across South Africa, they are preparing graduates. In fact, the system itself is preparing graduates for employment, and somehow it is also adding graduates into the pool of unemployment. Now, the question that then comes to, which is something that perhaps the minister should take note of, is should the digital transformation benefit us as young people to liberate us economically, or should the digital transformation help to gain knowledge and skills such that we become better exploited by the private sector or the people who are in fact the exploiters? This question is necessary because when we talk of the digital transformation, who exactly are we doing this for? Because you would have a question that says you are being prepared such that you can know digital transformation, so that you can be able to contribute to someone else and build someone else's future, which is the business person in this regard. Also, the last issue that probably needs serious attention with regards, and I'm sure, Chair, I'm almost closer to my time, is the issue of the visual learning, that, or perhaps rather the online teaching and learning. You would discover that in most of our institutions, particularly those that are currently disadvantaged, that you have got lecturers who are not advanced in terms of the digital transformation, or rather they are not even interested in the online. Now, in such an event, such lecturers, they will continue to bring, or rather, we conduct sessions. How then do we advance the struggle of digital transformation if we still have that kind of a generation within our space at this current, century, where it is talking about fourth industrial revolution? Because we've got lecturers that have been in the system since the 1980s, and you can't expect such individuals to tell us about the fourth industrial revolution, because they don't even understand the second and the first industrial revolution. So there's no way that they would know the the industrial revolution that we're in. So how then do we change that kind of a system such that we can be able to get people who would be able to assist us in advancing that kind of a system?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, leadership. As we move on, the next speaker is Amani former Deputy President of Nelson Mandela.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My name is Commander Smith, as introduced. I'm particularly interested in commenting and perhaps trying to bring solutions because I'm doing my research, Masters in Law in Communication Technologies, focusing on cybersecurity, nonetheless. Yes, I am. Let me first note and appreciate the contribution by Prof. Honorable Mukhaga and also the Minister. At least one of the things that I've learned today is that from here, really, the internet age has made the world boundless, and we can only grow and go forward as Africa. Yeah, that's the first thing that I want to note. Second, on the energy question, which I'm particularly interested on, I think we've engaged on this matter, Minister, several times. I think it's about time that as Africa, we have a scarcity of fossils. We have little oil, Libya, Nigeria, and so on. But particularly in the south, we are very much dominant on agriculture, corn, sugarcane, and so on. And the question of energy, I think it's about time that we take that fight forward and make sure that we compete on biofuels. That's the first contribution. The second contribution, I think, Minister, I want to look at you. Within your ministry, I know that there are 4 art champions that we are working with. But President Mugabe, I think there should be a dedicated research and engagement unit within the Ministry of Communication and Digital Technologies that will focus on higher education specifically. And I think SAUS should head that. And I'm sponsoring this as a program that going forward, SAUS must champion chairperson of the 4 art subcommittee. Lastly, on the age-tech divide that must be bridged, and I think institutionally it's something that we'll talk about with the Dean of Science, but the divide between education and technology seemingly or perceptibly being in front should be bridged by those who are at the helm of higher education, particularly deans. And I think the question of multi, trans and interdisciplinary research should be encouraged going forward. But I think we'll engage further internally the dean. But I thank everyone who has given us some food for thought and some research indications going forward. Thanks a lot.
Minister, my concern when it comes to 4AR is that the development around technology continues to leave out the poor, continues to develop the developed. Because provinces like the Eastern Cape, KZN, Limpopo continue to be where they were a few years back, while provinces like Gauteng, Western Cape are moving. I'm saying this because in the Eastern Cape, majority of spaces which are rural still do not have connectivity, still do not have network, we are still living on edge. But you find that the Western Cape and Gauteng are moving to 5G. That means that the development of the country is not streamlined with the technological advancement that is going on, which is a problem. Secondly, in terms of the studies that are introduced in universities, we know that the technological advancement, the digital advancement that is here now, that means that there are many jobs and many studies which will be obsolete. But you find universities still introducing those studies and still, in their majority, increasing caps for those studies that we know that in 10 years' time will be obsolete. We are saying that then we are setting the country up for a failure in terms of development. I agree with Steve when he says that there must then be a focus on higher education in terms of the studies that are produced and the studies that are introduced again. Because you can't tell me that the studies that we have now will be the ones that we need in the future. Because the ones that we need in the future, the ones that keep on decreasing the numbers. This year we have 30 students, the following year we have 20 students. It's even funny that these studies that are supposed to obsolete, they start introducing them even in private colleges as a way of bringing the students in. We celebrate acceptance of students in numbers. But the kind of studies that are there keep on setting us back as a country. So I like to marry my view with Comrade Smith there to say that there must be a focus in higher education and in terms of the studies that we have to still align with the development that we want to have as a country. Thanks.
My name is Joseph Amore. I'm the Deputy President of the SLC of the Northwest University. And let me also recognize the efforts made by SAUS and the Minister to stimulate interest on 4IR, particularly on institutions of higher learning, so that we can give back to our communities. But I would like to emphasize on the issue of connectivity, which is what we have learned during lockdown or COVID-19, where most of students which are coming from previously disadvantaged backgrounds could not connect, even if they had devices, but due to their remote areas could not connect. So it's very important that we address the issue of connectivity at remote areas so that students can also be able to benefit from online learning. As it has been said by other speakers, that it benefits the rich than the poor, or the ones in developed areas or cities are able to connect easily. And most of universities have improved their results during this COVID-19. But students which are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds were struggling. They had to wait for study materials which were said to be delivered, others were not delivered. Others are only benefiting now because they are back at campuses. So let's try to address the issue of connectivity, and it should also go or cascade down to those in secondary school, where our community libraries have got good connectivity in all our provinces, so that it can start there. Thank you very much.
Allow me also to join the speakers when they did acknowledge, and furthermore, I also acknowledge this progressive impeccable presentation that were made by different presenters. My name is Andy Ndabeni from the People's University. They did indicate on several issues, particularly they did indicate that the backwardness of the communities that are actually coming from the undeveloped are actually being left behind, Minister. Whereby we are grateful that the Minister is a young person, particularly comes from, and also might be able to understand those undeveloped countries in terms of why they must be developed. I would love you, Minister. Particularly, you raised the issue of that data must on for several occasions. I've been listening and following you in many presentations that we're making in different platforms. In the perspective of higher education, 100%, we speak about millions of students whom, if we can look, all of us can agree in principle that in the near future, we're actually moving forward. Each and every student will require a large number of data or gigs per se, and also a device in that context. Through you, Minister, I believe that the development or a program needs to be put in place, particularly to discipline and most importantly to address the issue of employment. I'm saying this referring to the reactionary response that we get from Telkom, MTN, Celtic, and Vodacom. When we do negotiate with them, that, please come a bit down because we are bringing a large number of students whom they will be using this particular data for some time. But there is no any way we are actually finding consensus with them. So I can let you know, Minister, that through you also noting that you are young, you can be able to develop a program that actually can even monitor. I believe that it's feasible that you can come up with a different network, a network that will only deal with students in terms of data, so that the government can be able to regulate that particular network. And we leave this reactionary one, because of this reactionary one, they ask us to make sure they maximize the profit. We create a new network that will deal decisively and directly with the students in terms of giving them data, make sure that they receive data in time, and then they actually receive a data at the lowest and lowest regulated cost. These are the ones that I did actually mention. They are going to continue in terms of milking and then now they see an opportunity now to actually meet the government directly. I believe that if you can be able to enter on that angle and deal successfully with that will create employment, will create stability, and will save a lot, particularly for our government, because of our government is struggling per se in that context. Because of not so long, you will hear that the government is actually going to enter with a network provider on a certain lease or on a certain number for a certain long period, which is going to cost government a lot of resources, not those particular resources. The last one, program director. Minister, I would like to challenge that you look the method that, for example, UP, they've entered and they've dealt precisely with this issue of online learning. Many other issues were left behind. That sends a very strong message that actually, we like it or not, by this thing of online learning is going to continue, particularly on those institutions that actually advantage in terms of the resources. I have a sister who actually attends Invent. She said they had done the curriculum of this particular year, whereby Chinese University was still finalizing some of the assessments who are about to prepare for exams which are going to happen January, February. So, okay, may I please close the session? In closing, so, Minister, I think we need not to run away or to shy away like this thing is here. So we need to decisively prepare. So may you please assist this disadvantage or student, this student actually are left behind so that they can be able to cope with other institutions, because in the near future, this will create a very big problem in terms of progress, particularly based on what I can actually raise on the issue of data, and also that program actually please put in place to assist the students and also the institutions. Thanks.
Or there's a fountain of opportunities that South Africa is providing, that these opportunities are not going directly to our students. I'll also mention that there's presence of the ministry in CUT, where I come from, but you find that the students in that university are not benefiting directly from that. We see that there are high school learners who come to our university and they are participating in these sessions in robotics, in artificial intelligence, business intelligence, and a lot of very helpful and beneficial programs in our university. Chairperson, as I have seen it, this will assist students, even those who will drop out, because it's clear, history has taught us that not all of us here will graduate. So if some of us would perhaps acquire some of these skills, we would be in a position, Chairperson, to survive beyond. This Chairperson will assist some of us to survive beyond our university studies, even if we drop out. I'm saying this, Chairperson, because some of our qualifications also are not necessarily going to assist us going into the industry. Some of us will go home and will do nothing. So benefiting from this ministry will assist a lot of us, whether you graduate or you drop out.
Thank you very much. President, allow me that second minute to give it to the SGU of Vets before I give it to Prof to comment. No problem. There is a mic somewhere.
Thank you, Chairperson of the session. I'd also like to say thank you for the wonderful contributions that were made here today. But I think as coming from an institution that is recognized as privileged, it's very difficult to say that or to divorce ourselves from the reality of being a Black South African child in this country. And the reality is that if you're coming from a privileged institution, you are more likely to succeed than you are if you're coming from an institution that has far less resources. And I think it's important that, for me personally, we speak about decolonization and decolonization of the curriculum. But when are we going to speak about how the programs that are offered at the various institutions do not fit in with the future that we're trying to create for ourselves? And I think that's where transformation, and when we talk about a revolution, that's the direction that we need to be thinking in as leaders of various institutions. For me, I can't speak about the issues that we faced as Vits, because I think most of the time we romanticize being a Vitty because it's so, we're okay with the struggles that we face as an institution. We are okay with those who are privileged moving forward and those who are underprivileged staying behind. So I think as leaders, we need to come together to find some form of cohesion amongst ourselves, because as young black people in this country, we cannot move forward if others are being left behind. So for me, that was the small contribution that I wanted to make, not only to our leaders who lead us at the top of the tier, but amongst us as peers who sit here together. We need to discuss ideas that will move us together as one unit. Thank you.
And give Prof to brief on the contributions that have been made in 2 minutes, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amongst the comments, there are comments that relate to curriculum. So, what needs to be done at all institutions is the participation by the students in the co-creation of the curriculum. That's very important. Participate in those discussions. Because what we do here at Mandela, that's exactly that. And in particular, I'm from the Faculty of Science, where students participate. Those graduate attributes that are there, students have participated and said, this is the skills that we want. Then you start there. If those are set because they know what the future wants, then you go backwards and you say, does the curriculum lead you to those graduate skills? If not, then it must be changed. So you have to engage in order to change the curriculum. If you sit back and think, well, there are the people who knows it all up there, then that's where the battle is going to be lost. That's one thing. There is a leader from WUSU who spoke about that especially in our historical black universities, there are still those professors, those lecturers, that they are not technological savvy. They are not experts in technology, or they are not actually comfortable. They are still very much looking forward to a traditional way of teaching. Therefore, the resources that must be invested or deployed have to also be deployed in a double-sided manner. Assist the students, at the same time assist the lecturers. We always forget, we think that the lecturers will make way and will find a way. That's not actually true, because I know I've got lecturers who we spend weeks training them during the COVID. Therefore, and that is something that we should not laugh at. When you're student leaders, don't only fight for students. If you know that the people who are supposed to teach us, actually they need help, speak for them as well. I think that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
All right, let me just respond to the few questions that have been asked. How would we ensure that we include people with disability in the work that we're talking about in terms of technology, including presentations, that I will throw back to yourselves, President, as the organizers of the events, because when you organize an event, you must take that into consideration. You are the one that knows your audience, therefore you prepare accordingly. So myself, or Prof was there from here, so I would like to take responsibility of hosting, and as calling. But just an important thing, because you are making reference to the fact that even when we provide the digital technologies, you find that we don't accommodate for the blind and others that are affected by the disabilities. If you go to CSIR, the Maraga Institute, they have produced a laptop, just forgotten the name, but the laptop that's meant for the deaf and the blind. It has braille and other things, but what we have not seen, which is again can be a challenge that's raised by yourself, is the South African government procuring from those.
when we briefed, when we spoke to the Ministry of Social Development and DBE, they complained about the price. Of course, what leads to price reduction is when you create demand. Therefore, if government is not looking into the 1% or 3% of people with disabilities that must have access to that, including those that can afford, it means the price will always be higher because the cost to manufacture or produce is really high. So we shouldn't try to destroy the innovators that are working on this. And that's why there must be incentives or the balance in terms of accommodating those. And once again, it goes back to the SRC leadership that knows the constituency that they have to say, in this faculty or in this area, this is what we think must happen in order to accommodate and make sure that there's digital inclusion for all. I'm focusing on digital because that's what we're talking about. The issue of the network vendor again, okay, network cuts across network issues, is another issue that has been a concern for all, actually, not only learners, including workers. As I said, the focus previously for both government and the private sector was to deploy infrastructure at the areas of production. It's offices, it's whatever, but we have not looked at where people are, which is what now we are saying. When I released the ministerial directives of COVID in March before my dinner, I then said we have to make sure that we provide spectrum relief, temporal spectrum to the operator so that they can deploy infrastructure to enable remote working at homes. Therefore, we wanted them to boost their capacity so that people can know that they can access the internet. Of course, it wasn't going to happen throughout the country because it also talks to resources, and that was temporal. But with the release now that I spoke about, the process that has started towards spectrum licensing, we are giving them no choice, the operators, to say you've got to connect, go to the rural areas, townships and everywhere to make sure that there are towers. That's why I said one of the areas that you must focus on in terms of the ecosystem in order to generate the economic spin-off is where will these towers be built and who must build them. If I were to just give you now briefly on what happens, we release the spectrum, Spectrum is going to turn around the economy, but nobody tells you how and how much investment goes to that. And when we cancel auctions the spectrum, those that will benefit, we're likely to make about 3 billion, 4 billion, or 8 billion maximum if we are lucky. And then people are just focusing on that 8 billion once off, whilst operators are getting 50 billion, not less than 50 billion a year. So that's why we are saying these are the opportunities that we have not looked at, because Wangumuntu ufunuya on tendering yendlela. Wangumuntu ufuna tender tablets without producing targets. So we are saying now, looking where the money goes to, who builds the towers, because if operators are saying we are investing 50 billion in South Africa over 3 years, that money goes to towers. Which companies are contracted? Are they South African companies? Are they really looking at the disadvantage to say we've got lots of these people that can build these towers? If we don't have capable people to build the towers, how do we force the likes of Huawei, which is dominating the infrastructure of the towers, force them to say you have local partners that empower other people that must come through the value chain? So that's why I went back to say understanding of the ecosystem is very important so that we can identify our niches, whether we lawyers or what. Earlier on I spoke about part of the digital transformation, and then I spoke to the security of information. He said he's studying cyber security, because if you are saying data is the new oil, as I spoke about also storage of the information, people have to trust the service that you're offering. Whether you're a bank, whether you're a post office, whether you are whoever, if people hear that your system is hacked, just like my WhatsApp was hacked, they lose confidence in that. So it's important to make sure that you build a cyber task force, and lawyers play a critical role in that. We don't have many lawyers in that space, unfortunately. Even the Minister of Justice tried, I remember when he enrolled at VETS when I was still there, he enrolled for the course, and I was asking him, did you finish? He was like, that's complicated. It's complicated. Yes, it's very complicated. I don't know if your time is done. Deliberately that must be excluded. But that's politically on education. But what I'm trying to say is, you're saying even lawyers must be integrated. Yes, lawyers have space. Actually, if you go to California, you find that robots are the ones that are representing people. Lawyers are losing business to an extent that even politicians are not that safe, because there was once a robot that contested elections. So nobody is safe. Hence we say we must not build digital illiterates, Prof. The students that we will produce here and other campuses, we must make sure that the students that are relevant. I spoke of building a bilingual student or citizen. It means you've got to have both skills. So it's important to empower ourselves. And of course, I spoke to inclusion. And inclusion actually, it does not only talk into the geographic area, it also talks to being disabled, being illiterate and all that. Muzi raises a very important thing. Prof responded to that, how do we ready the graduates for the future? And a critical question arises. Should digital transformation help us to be inventors or consumers in terms of us having to go and work for a particular person? I said earlier on, we have to build a knowledge society. I said we're coming to schools in order to acquire education so that we can help produce solutions to the challenges. That tells you, you choose what you want to do with the knowledge that you've acquired at school. You choose. But if the curricula does not appreciate that we also have entrepreneurs that must be produced by universities, then it's not doing justice to our people. I had Prof talking about that also, to say you guys must be involved at that level. Which is why I said the digital transformation in the education sector is not only looking at the issue of access to data and the device, it talks to who produces the content. And again, very few black people you find in that space, including of language experts, Prof. You still find that we don't have lots of black language experts, which causes another dilemma as we talk about the technologies in the fourth industrial revolution. We said we shouldn't be discriminative of anyone, but if you look into the algorithms that are being used by programmers, whether you go on Google or whatever, especially artificial intelligence, if you see, they monopolize in certain languages. There is a bias towards certain languages, which is going to cause a crisis that when you go for whatever like that recognizes or that uses facial recognition, they can't recognize a face like this because we've been born doing. And those are the ethics that we're saying we need legal people to look into. That how do we ensure that the ethics that are applied in the new technologies are ethics that do not undermine who we are and therefore what we want to achieve. Yes, again. Teachers and lecturers that are comfortable. I said most people are comfortable with the status quo. This is what they know, or that they have these degrees, and then that's it. Forgetting that I said the experience, the degrees were very responsive to the 19th century. We're in the 21st century, which means those that are responsible to build the mind should have an appreciation of that and therefore upskill themselves, which is why all employers should invest in upskilling their personnel. Because if they don't do that, then we're going to be faced with this challenge that we're faced with. When I introduced the issue of providing cyber labs to schools, what was it? 2012. I was fighting with Deputy Minister Anwar Surti because they were saying, no, our teachers don't know how to use computers. Our students, and I was like, how are they going to know how to use them if we don't expose them to that? We went to an extent of working together with Vodacom, even if you are saying they are reactionary. We established teacher training centers, but again, the Department of Education was not ready for that, because they did not make space for those educators to attend training. So it requires flexibility and a push from yourselves. It is you, leaders of students, that must fight for this. Abantu are fairly comfortable with what they know. They don't want to go to something they don't know. They don't want to be seen as failures. They're comfortable with what they know, therefore they will do this, they will drive. Even when you talk about introduction of virtual learning, they still fight it, but no, our people are not ready for that. And you have to understand we are different generations, and therefore the methodologies that were used are not going to be the same that you're equipped with today. We are different. I said you're a generation of internet, and they're not that generation. They're the generation of the postal services. Post-managed delivery and all that. And that's how they are, therefore they must put flip charts, they must do all those things, and then they must prepare, whatever things that they do. But it requires everybody to make sure, and as I said, without forcing them. We should try to make them see why it's important for them to remain relevant, because as long as they are in the employ of this sector, it's important that they understand and appreciate the new techniques that are being utilized. We are running a program together with Telkom that is looking at empowering educators and lecturers. What we have observed also that even in our interventions we've been focusing on the learners, of which it has not really yielded much results, because we deploy these cyber classrooms, then the minute we leave, the teacher that we trained has left, got transferred, and then they stay there, they are not utilized. So we said there's a need for us, before we talk about these learners, let's focus on those that are in front of the learners that provide the content. But it's going to be a tiny drop because we're just piloting. I am not education. The fact that I'm given a responsibility to lead and coordinate for it doesn't mean that people stop having their jobs. Budget our education still goes to education. It doesn't matter how much I would want all of you to have tablets and whatever. Your budget is your budget. I don't have a say in it. But if we work together, that's what is important. We work together already with Minister Nzimande. If we work together from the pressure from your side, and then we bring everybody on board, we're then able to achieve maximum results or impact out of the work that we want to achieve. There's a need for energy stability, I fully agree, because there may be those devices, we can introduce all these things, but if we load shedding, there's going to be traffic. That's the reality in terms of online learning and all that, or in the internet. So that is why if you look into the composition of the Presidential 4IR Commission, we took all experts across sectors. We did not focus on ICTs. We looked at everyone, because when you're going to say we're going to provide laptops or tablets for students, you also have to take into consideration that goes with it. If it's our charger, what must it have in terms of the energy capacity and the real capacity that is provided in South Africa, what are the limitations and all that. They go together. So that's why it's important to work across all sectors. So yeah, it means I know the minister responsible for energy and minister for public enterprises. President will be making announcements. I'm not going to be declaring those, but they are working on that. There is a need, a proposal is made that we should establish a research and innovation branch in my department. You guys really want me fired? Why would I be taking some blade? Now I want me to fight all these fights already. You see I'm fighting. No, I'm not getting there yet. Still want to keep my job. We do have a branch called ISET in our department. ISET stands for Information Society and Development Branch. That's where we do research. We haven't been very hands-on on research because we write on CSIR, but we're trying to revive. We just hired a group of researchers now for the different technologies, the different sectors, but that's only to monitor and implement the Presidential Commission report. So if we work with science, fortunately for higher education, the science and innovation already, it's just us working together to identify those things. We sit down with the minister, all the stakeholders to say, how can we complement the work that he does coming from our side? So through SAUS, again, you can do that. I can't go to higher education and tell them, this is what you must do. Hey, watch your space. And at Ngozi, you're talking to the issue of digital divide. It's very true. Fortunately, again, I want to emphasize this. You have Minister Nzimande, you have myself, who both come from these underdeveloped areas. And one thing, as we talk about the interventions that we're making, he's very clear that he wants us to go to the disadvantaged universities. That's what he has told us. Even when we engaged with the operators about Telkom in terms of the interventions, he was clear that you guys like focusing on the privileged universities because you're looking at profit margins. Therefore, you have to go there. So we are really trying to work together in terms of bringing the interventions. We have a meeting scheduled for next week in terms of trying to tighten what is it that we can do in terms of the collaboration in relation to this area. Of course, it is key that as we talk to quality of infrastructure, you made reference again to the fact that in urban areas like Joburg, you find that there's deployment of 5G. Okay, let me clarify this. There is no 5G that is licensed. Okay, I know media has been saying the minute that there is 5G, there's nothing like that. I said in Casa, was it last week or 2 weeks back?
2 weeks, Prime Minister.
ICASA issued the invitation to apply. It's going to be a process, and only in December we will be licensing the spectrum on 4G and 5G. People do test because innovators come up with technologies. So they say we're testing 5G technology. Otherwise, no 5G has been rolled out in this country. Even myself as the Minister of Communications, I do not have that. I only have people who are testing. So until it is licensed, even when we have licensed in December, it doesn't mean that by July they would have deployed the infrastructure. That's the reality, because they must still make their profit on the 4G spectrum that we have licensed. So it's going to take probably 12 months to whatever, but getting ready, that is why I'm saying the opportunities that are presented in that is what we must focus on, including coming up with technologies that respond to 5G. So for now, yes, we are on edge because of the poor deployment, which is what one of the conditions that we are putting for the spectrum licenses is to make sure that they connect outward inward. Unlike if we focus in Joburg and then they go out even on the areas. So President is very clear, we will not be making interventions to say in the education sector, this is what must be used. The technologies are not going to be different. They're going to be the same, therefore the connectivity capability or bandwidth capability must be the same. Network for rural areas, I've addressed it up there. Coverage for all, it's covered there. I hope you will be fine with that. Northwest, it talks to all of that. The release of spectrum is going to see lots of deployment of the towers, and therefore that improves quality of network in the areas that we are in. One of the mistakes or the lessons that we've learned is that we have focused more on population coverage by operators. That when we report, we talk of 99% coverage in South Africa, and people think that, abantu South Africa, all coverage. We have lost sight of focusing on geographical coverage, which is what we say you must focus on now. Even if you are by the river, there must be access to network. You shouldn't be deprived because you went to your milli fields and then there's no network. So those are the things that we are trying to introduce. Of course, we are learning day by day, and it's not going to happen all of it tomorrow, but with the new spectrum release, those are the things that we are trying to address. Data cost for students, okay. Now I'm going to be controversial. I have a responsibility to protect myself. Education is business. As much as we say it's the social responsibility for all. People who are running these institutions are making money. When we say everything must be free, it means you must be paying and we must be subsidizing the universities, and then you are saying the people that deploy my infrastructure must not be paid. I'm not sure if you are prepared to say lecturers must go for a month not being paid and teaching students. Because if I allow that, it means I'm going to allow these companies to retrench. But it is important to say they shouldn't overprice our people, which is what we are looking at. Hence, we fast track these things of the spectrum and to see how we then meet them halfway. But you are correct to say we can meet them halfway, but for as long as them who provide the service, they can continue to dictate. But universities also, as they say these are the services that we provide, they should include the tools of trade in that. And the cost that you are paying for and we are paying for is what must be included in terms of saying the reality is that we introduced a hybrid model. Therefore, how do we cater for those that must access these services at home in the monies that we're already paying to universities? Apologies, academics. I have to say that. Yes, that talks to the education equipment. We are negotiating prices though. If as I said, we released ITA, I said look into the ecosystem. The ITAs that were released were 2. If you read my policy direction, it also introduced a spectrum for the wireless open access network, whereby we said we're calling for the previously disadvantaged groups to come and be part of one, and then they can offer services. That gives an opportunity for those that can come and say, through one, how to make sure that the social services in terms of education and other basic services that we are saying they are must in South Africa or they are right that people must enjoy, how are they catered for there? But again, it's going to require education to come with this budget. Because I agree my infrastructure must be maintained. People must be paid. Innovations must be done. So it requires us to have this discussion at this level, and then we take it to my level to say, what does education bring on board? We met with Yusuf. We do stuff with, what's the TVS called? The SACU and Innocence Matter. And we explained, I called all the CEOs of the telcos to say, here we are, I want you to make these interventions in terms of zero rating the data for content, or education and all that, but their arguments made sense. And then we just said, okay, how do we then offer discounts? That's why you see UP, actually UNISA was the first one that we met with, and they started providing, because of the engagements that we put with them. We are able to do these things if we all understand the ecosystem and the value that goes to it. I emphasize. The network for social services, yes, I fully agree. The Soundwell network at Sunren that we're not utilizing. We're building a state digital infrastructure company, which is going to bring all the infrastructure, whether it's on ESCOM, Transnet, and my two entities, Centec and BBI, under one roof, so that we can see how to leverage on those, so that when CETA comes on board, at least it's at a cheaper cost, and then that would really help some of the challenges that we are faced with. Moses is concerning, you are telling me that the university students are excluded at CUT. She will look into that, because you did mention that your programs benefit the matric going students, and indeed, because, as I said, all we can do is to spread the word. Then who catches the worm is the one that runs faster. We do not come and give you, but all we can say is what. So who registered first? Maybe it's the high schools that got their students to register first. We have programs for high schools, of course, but we also have, even for educators and tutors, as I said, including postgraduate students. It's a matter of when they call for applications and all those, you follow those and then you apply. We are paying for that as government. We go out and partner with people to make sure that we pay for those, because for now, we are kickstarting, trying to get education to come on board and invest in these skills. Just like now, we are happy that there's inclusion of data science amongst the key skills that will be offered, which is one of the key skills, and we appreciate the recognition by the Department of Higher Education. So even on those of robotics and others, these things that are there, I said we'll be working with TVETs, where we don't have university collaborations, and there we're providing the actual equipment, those 3D printers for those that want to do 3D work. We provide skill and then the 3D printer for you to go and design whatever. Those that are programming drones, you go and do, and then you have a drone there that you must utilize. We are doing this because, as I said earlier, there's a need for us to invest in vocational education, which is something that we've abandoned. We've been made that we can all be policy makers. I was happy when he said not all of us are going to graduate. But what then happens with us when we've not graduated? Do we stop being citizens that must enjoy their rights in the country? We shouldn't, which is why we're saying there's a need for us to collaborate. Our mantra in the department is that of coordinate in order to collaborate for effective execution. Because you can have policy experts that come from the university with their theories and everything, but you need people that must do the actual work. Like I said, the smart cities will not be built by policymakers. Smart cities requires artisans, then policymakers must come and say, for this to work, and then to make sure that you don't undermine people's rights and all the English that you guys speak, then it will find expression, but the people that must do the actual work are the artisans. So how do we build that? Hence I spoke of the bilingual citizen that must have this degree that it has from a university, and then this digital skill, because when we talk digital skills, we're talking of that you must have the know-how, the capability to do that you are supposed to do. Okay? Program Director, take your mic. I've got to.
Thank you very much, Ms. I can tell that we are really getting paid to talk. I'm sure all the clarities have been clarified by the Minister. I saw Prof gave us coffee, so now I was thinking, should I drink this coffee? I must remain solidarity, because otherwise this coffee might cause anarchy. I will hand over to Comrade Policy to come into the closing remarks in 2 minutes. As he comes, I will give to Honorable Haha to say his last word.
In Cuba, they've got a concept of municipalization of universities. In other words, each university establishes a forum in communities to facilitate discussion, receiving all these complex contributions. That's a model of universities in Cuba. In other words, where there is no university, you get a forum that belongs to that university, facilitated by professors. Professors are not necessarily professors, like in our case, like the professor went to hear. Teachers, lecturers are called professors in that situation. How I wish that one day we may realize that. To connect our universities to our communities so that contributions of this nature are properly facilitated. Those illiterate individuals, Tinakasina generation in 1976, many of our people missed the education during that time, but find opportunity to make a contribution to what they fought for. The future of this country is in your hands. And that's what we must emphasize. So the whole notion of ownership and control of all what Minister Ndabeni is raising, ownership and control, should be the buzzword during your generation. Ownership and control of this economy should be the buzzword. And that should start with our institution. The future of this country is in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, over to you.
Thank you, Comrade Awek, our very effective program director of the day. My name is Comrade Police Namala. I am from Bumala. I am here I was supposed to give us a summary, comrades. I am a scriber or a secretary of this subcommittee of the NEC. But due to time constraints, we are not going to delve much into the summary. What we are going to do is that we are going to write a comprehensive document that will cover everything that's discussed here. And we shall send it to all university SRSs and presidents so that they can look at it but also make their own inputs. And it is that document that we are going to share and submit it to the department as our position as students, as far as the board national motion is concerned. So I think that I will then take this opportunity to thank the University of Nelson Mandela University, which allowed itself to be abused in a short period of time by the union to host this particular event. And they duly accepted and they assisted us throughout